Thanks for tuning in to Off the Wall. I'm your host, Joshua Wall, and joining me on today's show is Patti Berardi from Rogers TV Brantford. Patti, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for inviting me, Josh. It's been so long since we've actually been able to chat. I wish it was in person, but virtually is great too.
One day, we are actually in the process right now of building a live set. So once we get through COVID, I'll be taping live in a studio, and I'm excited about it. So,
I will be
Patti,
live in a studio too at some point.
and I can't wait for anybody in our audience. This is a bit of a role reversal for me. Patti is the producer down at Rogers TV, and I can't count the number of times I've been down in her studio for a recording of a show, and now she's here in mine, at least digitally. Patti, seriously, thank you so much for being here. It's an honor. So to start off the episode, first things first, who's Patti?
Okay, well, I'm born and raised in Brantford. I started in school at Major Bellachie and then went on to PJ and graduated from there. And while I was at PJ, I took a co-op placement at Rogers TV here in Brantford. And after my co-op placement, a position came up part-time and they suggested I apply for it, and I did. So I started my career there when I was 17, and I've stayed through. I did do a little bit of time in Kitchener in our operation there, but I've been back in Brantford for nearly 20 years producing. So yeah, it's been great for me to be able to work at home in the field that I love.
So tell us a little bit about 17-year-old Patti taking a co-op at Rogers. What did you do?
So I was 16 when I started. It was in my grade 11 year, and so it started out with doing studio camera, and then quickly went into things like directing, editing, being out in the field, mobiles. Back then, we did Brantford Blast. Well, it wasn't Brantford Blast; it was called Brantford Smoke Hockey. So I was working on city councils, hockey, anything in the community, Brantford Red Sox. And I really just loved the environment and the whole community perspective that it offered. And so I set my goal to go there full time. And it's always been something that I loved doing. And I'm really lucky that I've been able to continue to do that job for so many years.
The co-op was a high school co-op?
Yeah, so I was in grade 11 and I was taking a English media course. And my teacher said to me, "You have a lot of potential. Why don't you do a co op placement?" And at the time, I didn't really know a lot about Rogers. I had been there one time earlier to watch a show taping because I had an interest in TV pretty young. But I went and did an interview and I showed them my little demo tape from PJ, and they accepted me. And, I was super shy, and I started to learn how to talk to people and do interviews and range crews and speak with people coming in from the community. And then it just gave me more confidence to continue and build my skills. And it's always been a place that's a training ground, and the staff mentored me like I now mentor students that come along. So it really just was a good fit for me right from day one.
So how did you go from being a co-op student to an employee?
Well, I think a lot of it was I just really loved it. And so I was doing my co-op hours, but then I would stay and do extra volunteer hours. And I was like, teach me everything you know, teach me everything. I want to learn it all. And so I think that they saw that I had that desire to do well, and they thought I would make a good fit. And so my first job was actually master control, which was where we played back the shows. We no longer have that position in Brantford. When I started at Rogers in Brantford, we had 5 staff, and now I'm the only staff there. So as you can imagine, over time, certain things become centralized, and in many media businesses, that's what's happened. But yeah, I think I just had that desire, and people saw that in me, and they encouraged me and supported me to apply. And then as I did well in those part-time positions, I was still doing production, and then I just kept working my way up into that final producer role that I'm in now.
So I always ask my guests, you got involved in this so young.
Yeah, I was a kid. Like I was a kid.
Was there anything else? Any
You
other
know,
jobs, any other careers? Was there a time when you weren't working
yeah,
at Rogers?
sure. I started like my first job was working in the mall. I did some retail stints, and I worked in a donut shop for. Actually, I was working in a donut shop when the position came up at Rogers. When I was a student as well, I worked at Sunoco Paper Products in the paper mill here because my dad was a long-term employee there. So I have had other experiences, but this has been my solid job since I was 17. And yeah.
So that leads me right into my next question. And you've touched on it, but I really want to dive just a little bit deeper. You could have done anything. You could be doing anything. Why this? What keeps you there?
Yeah, so early on, my journey in TV, I wasn't really attracted to hard-hitting news. I really loved the storytelling of hearing people's stories and people-centered stories. So community TV has that quirky, unique factor that we can do stories that you don't see in mainstream media. And so I was really attracted to the storytelling component, but not in a way that was, hard hitting news. And I was not the person to send out to put a camera in the face of somebody who has lost a child or, filming a fire or a car accident. I'm too sensitive for that. And I recognized really early on that I wanted to do TV that helped people, that helped build the community as opposed to news stories that are maybe more emotional and hard hitting. And it's not to say I don't talk about issues or do things on that, but it's from a different perspective. It's always from a how can we make our community better as opposed to, gotcha politics and that style of news really isn't something that I'm interested in. And the other part about what I do is it's a variety. Sometimes I'm doing music, sometimes I'm doing cooking. So it really helps me stay interested because it's never the same every day.
So let's go right into it then. Rogers TV, Brantford. What do you do there now? And maybe even talk a little bit about what Rogers TV Brantford does in general.
Yeah, so we are the community station. We're community access, which means anyone from the community can approach us with a story idea, with a show idea. And if we have the resources and we think it's something that the community would like, we'll produce it. Now, certainly the last year with COVID, we've had to shut our studios. We're not doing any studio productions. Everything is like this through Zoom. So we're doing virtual programming right now. But there will come a time when studio does open back up. And when that resumes, we do Brant Life, which Dave Carroll hosts, which is all talking about community events. I also do another show called Candy and Commerce, which is a focus on the food industry, social media, marketing, and those sorts of stories. And then from there, we do other short run series. So I've done things like Sweet Occasions with Stacey Bester from Sweet Bakery. We did, I think, 5 seasons of cooking with her or baking. And then whatever comes at us. So I've produced hockey shows, I've produced music, entertainment, art. It's whatever the community comes to us with is what our content is at any given time. So it varies from year to year, and we're certainly a launching point for a lot of people. A lot of people come to us and they learn how to do TV and then they go off and do TV in other places, or like you're doing, do their own podcasts and webcasts. So it's really a mixed bag, so to speak, of content coming out of there.
So you mentioned something that our audience might find very interesting. So you're saying that if somebody who was watching or listening to this show had an idea, they
Yeah,
could reach out to you and you could help
absolutely.
make that idea come to life.
That's what I do. So I'm an access producer, which means I work with the community to bring their ideas to fruition. So if somebody comes to me and says I want to do a show on early childhood education, then I would work with them to build that from concept to completion. So I provide the technical obviously the technical background and support, but I also have an editorial background that I can help people with their content and writing and teaching on air performance and all that stuff too. So yeah, anybody can get a show. It's not you don't have to be in the know or special friend. It's if you have that desire and commitment to being a community producer, that's how you end up on air.
And then in that same respect, if I knew something exciting that was happening in the community, or if I knew of an evolving story, what's the process there? What if something cool is happening and I want to tell you about it?
Sure. So there's lots of ways you can go to our website, rogerstv.com, and there's a section where you can fill out be on a show. My email's on there. People Facebook me, people send me messages on Twitter, Instagram. However, you can get a hold of me. I will make sure that I get in touch with you and offer you an idea of how we can help you promote or talk about your event, or if it's a fundraising initiative. Like, we love when people from the community contact us because it allows us to be more reflective of what's happening. And if I'm one person, I can't possibly know every single thing going on in the community. So yeah, anything will help promote.
So, considering we're talking about, production and a studio, and let's go behind the curtain. Let's pretend we're pre-COVID or
Okay.
post-COVID, and you're in the studio. I think it's amazing, personally, having been in that studio, especially when it is full with people and there's a show being taped, and you're always there in your booth, and it's just an energy and a vibe
Yeah.
and such a cool atmosphere. And I remember, I'll never forget my first experience coming in and getting to go on. But for anybody who's never been to a television studio, who's never been to our local television studio, take us behind the scenes of a day in the life. So you'd wake up, you'd have your coffee, you show up in the studio, you open the doors, and then what?
Yeah, so it depends. Sometimes we're doing multiple productions in a day. So if we're in the studio, quite often we have people from the community as well as our hosts. So yeah, I would come in, I would make sure everything's set up and ready to go, and then I'm there at the door greeting people as they come in. And certainly for a show like Brant Life, we would have everyone in our living room outside of the studio, and we'll say, here's what's going to happen, here's how the show's going to roll, here's the amount of time your segment is, and just to make people feel comfortable. But the one thing about that Brantford studio is that it really is a fun place to be. It's such a relaxed, laid back environment. And I think that's something we've always prided ourselves on in the Brantford studio, is that we're welcoming to the community, and it's a fun place, and you get to run into other people from the community, and people can chat and catch up. And that's really something I've missed with COVID, because I've been a year out of the studio, and I really miss that excitement before a show where people like yourself would come in and everybody's like, "Hey, how are you?" It's just that connection with people that you can't get through a virtual meeting. It's just there's that atmosphere that can't be emulated any other way than being there.
There seems to be a common theme amongst my guests who come on the show, and it's this want and desire to go into work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Before we move on to the theme of the episode, I wanted to touch on one more thing that you had mentioned, and it's something that anybody in our audience will know is very important to me, and that's in mentorship and
Mm.
in things like co-op and learning opportunities. And I know that it's important to you too. So could you elaborate a little bit further on how that works at Rogers? Again, in a pre-COVID or post-COVID, uh, how could somebody become a volunteer? What would they expect? And why is that important to you?
Well, it's important to me because if I didn't have that opportunity at 16 years old, uh, what other opportunity would I have ever had to learn about the career of my choice? So I could have possibly, oh, I want to work in TV, but I wouldn't have had any idea of what that meant. And so I know for myself, doing a co-op placement and having supervisors that believed in me and encouraged me and taught me really, really made a difference in my life. And so when I became a co-op supervisor, I made it important to myself to continue to pay that forward. as people did in me. And not every co-op that came through our doors went on to work in TV. Some of them, in fact, one that I'm still in touch with, I said to him, maybe this isn't for you. You know, it's a tough field. And he had interests in taking over his dad's company. And I said, you know, maybe that's something you can do, work with your dad and then maybe do the TV on the side. And so he actually comes back at 30 something years old and says, thank you for being honest with me and saying maybe this wasn't for you. But then on the flip side of that, we have volunteers and co-ops that went on to work in news, went on to work at the Weather Channel. Some of them are out in California editing movies. And so it really is about finding out what that student or that volunteer wants to learn. So if it's somebody who wants an on-air focus, how can I give you on-air opportunities? If it's somebody that wants to learn how to edit, you need to learn how to shoot before you learn how to edit, because a good editor has to be aware of good shots, right? So we would work with them to determine what it is they want to learn, what they want to focus on, and sometimes teach them the things that they don't want to learn, because this field is tough. You can't just go be an on-air person or just go be a camera person anymore. You need to have a wide variety of skills now, which include social media. There's so much that's changed. So, yeah, that's what we do. We just work with them to see what they want to go into and then provide those experiences and feedback. And I'll be honest, there's times that I've been tough on students and said, if you handed this in, like, have you seen this on TV ever? Would you see a shot like that? And they say, no. And I said, well, why would you think it's okay for that shot to be on our channel? So it's sometimes a little bit of tough love, but at the same time, you have to prepare them for what they're going into. It's not always please and thank you in a live control room. It can be, you know, you're yelled at, or like creative people tend to be a little bit emotional. And yeah, so I think that's important, is to just to support them through what it is they want to learn, and provide them those opportunities.
You hit the nail on the head when you said it's not easy. It's not supposed
Oh
to be
gosh,
easy. It's
no,
supposed to
it's
be
not
hard.
easy.
You know, there's a saying, when you run into troubles and when you run into things that are hard, that's how you know you're going in the right direction. That's great.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, how do they get involved? How do you become
yeah.
a
So
volunteer?
volunteering is rogerstv.com, and we have a volunteer form there. And again, I'm accessible in the community, so my email address is on our website, but that's the best way, is to just get in touch with me or fill out a volunteer application, and then we'll go about. We do have a person that coordinates our volunteers, does the orientation part of it, but um, contacting me, I can put them in touch with them as well. And quite often that's what happens. And if it's co-op placement, you have to go through your school. So you go to your high school co-op teacher, and then they'll get in touch with me. But right now, until we're back in studio, all of that's sort of on hold.
What's amazing to me is that this truly embodies what you said at the beginning about it being community TV. If you want to have a show, approach us
Yeah.
about making a show. If you want to be on the show, or you know something that should be on the show, tell us. And if you want to work on the show, reach out to us and you have an opportunity to volunteer, which may very well turn into a career, whether it's with Rogers or with someone else.
And you know, even if it doesn't turn into a career, there's so many benefits to learning how to present yourself and getting comfortable in that environment of being able to talk to people. And I think that if that's one thing I've learned from working in TV, is that I now know how to, I'm not so shy to start a conversation with people like I was when I was 16 or 17. So it's not unusual for me to be at the grocery store and just start talking to somebody that I don't know, because I've spent my career building rapport with people and making them feel comfortable with me. So I think that a lot of that leaks into, you know, my regular everyday life. So I think there's so many benefits of being in that building for kids, and even for people that are early in their career and trying to develop a product or business or getting into marketing. There's just so many skills they gain out of doing TV.
Anybody in our audience might think that we planned this, but I couldn't honestly think of a better way to go right into the episode's theme. So, for anybody who's new here, every week on my show, I like to think about a theme that is relevant to my guest, and then I ask my guest to kind of explain, what it means to them. And for today's episode, the theme was going live. And to give you a little bit more on that, Patti, I'm hoping that you'll talk to me a little bit about one, just doing it. I can imagine so many of your guests come into the show and you tell them this is going live, we're going live to air, and they may panic. But I think to myself of a business owner who's just created their first website and is getting ready to push that button and go live, or that new business owner who's getting ready to open up their door for the first time, or somebody who's in theater or whatever. There's a million ways that I think the advice or the opinion that you can provide to us right now. So please share with the audience, one, how do you coach people to be ready for when you go live? And then, any in your own words.
I think, I mean, I love live. Live control room directing is my favorite. I love the feeling of a live show because there's pressure on you to to technically execute everything properly. I love the idea. Elections are some of my favorite times when we have election night and we go live and we're, updating results and having that banter back and forth. But I think that you get better with it. And anybody who's looking to use video for their business, you get better at it. You might not be great your first time that you do it, but it's with anything, it's a skill, you build it and it's a muscle. You get better at it, you get stronger at it. You go back and you look at, oh, maybe I said too much or I said too much, and you just work on it, and you've got that video to go back and look at and say, how can I build on this? And not be afraid to take that constructive criticism, right, from somebody like myself or yourself who's used to doing on air. We might say, you say this too much. I know habit that some of my hosts had was, we're really excited, we're so excited, and I actually remember saying to hosts, you got to stop saying you're excited, because you guys are excited every single week, and it's not any, it's just getting boring. Say something else, come a different way for introducing people, but just do it, because it'll go away as you build up more videos. Other things will come along and people will forget about that. And I think the part about going live is that it's more exciting. It's just, when you're taped, you can stop and you can cut stuff out. And I think people, when they're taped, are even more worried about what they're saying as opposed to when it's live. So I would say go live whenever you can. It adds a more um, fun and exciting element that's really current.
Tell us a little bit about the perfectly imperfect, and a little bit about how something that is produced and like a drama or like an episode of a TV show versus something that's live. Why is it so more like, what makes it more real about the fact that it isn't, let's say, contrived, and that somebody is speaking off the cuff?
Well, I think it depends what it's for. Certainly, um, there's reasons to go live. There's reasons to go live when you have current breaking information or you're at an event and you want to show that in the moment as opposed to 2 days later or an hour later. Um, TV in the news or information world is way different than, scripted drama. And I think that people have different uses for those sorts of things. There are times when you'd want like a tightly produced video if you're promoting a product or something. But if you're just having conversation or breaking news or showing an event, that excitement of taking your camera around when people are there in the moment really captures the spirit of it a lot more, as opposed to recording it and then using it later. That's just my thoughts around it. But um, I think using Facebook Live for someone like yourself or other businesses is a great way. Is a great way to get that practice, to get that excitement, and just it pops up in people's feed. They watch it. If it's driving business to come down, people to come down to your place of business or order a product or just hear the story of somebody that's in town doing something special, it does serve a purpose. And I think that if you just try, you'll get better at it with time. And don't expect to be perfect at it, because you may be in your field for whatever it is your expertise is. You didn't maybe practice up on being a video person too. I mean, I think your real estate has changed so much. It used to be your picture, an ad in the paper, and all of your business was face to face. Now, you guys have to be hosts of shows, and you have to do video constantly, and the competition changes. So I think that you just got to get comfortable with it. And I'm seeing a lot of people that I wouldn't have expected doing video now because of COVID-19. They've realized they're being forced to shift into that world.
Well, to end off on this, I do just want to sincerely thank you for helping me get to where I am today, because it was sitting in your studio going live for the first time that helped give me the confidence to be able to do what I'm doing now. And, that was years ago when I first came into your studio for the first time. And now I just feel so confident when I'm on camera or I'm on
I
video.
love those stories. I do, and thank you for saying that because I know that there's an impact when people come through our doors, and I really love to hear that we were part of helping make somebody feel more comfortable, because I would hate for people to go away and not have a great experience at being in on our shows. And I think that that's why we get a lot of repeats of people wanting to come back because they have a pleasant experience.
What I think is just wonderful about it is it's very much like riding a bike or learning how to swim. Once you've done it, once you've gone live for the first time and you realize that there's just an energy to it, an atmosphere to it, you'll always feel that comfort level the next time you have to do it. Um,
Absolutely.
Thanks for sharing that, Patty.
Thank you.
So the next part of our episode is a community shout out. And I like to give an opportunity to my guests to shout out a local nonprofit or community initiative or something that they're a part of or a strong advocate for, especially during these trying times when many of these organizations are going through tough times. So, is there anybody you want to shout out, something, a cause that's important to you?
Yeah, and I mean, first of all of our community groups are important to me. I don't want anyone to think that they're not, because we have some really wonderful charities and organizations in Brant. But one that's near and dear to my heart is Help a Child Smile. And that's an organization that supports children with cancer that are being treated for or have been treated for cancer at McMaster Children's Hospital. So there are kids from Brant, but also from other parts of Ontario. And this organization is really run by a powerful, hardworking group of volunteers and board that puts so much time and energy that almost every single dollar they raise actually goes to direct support for the families. So they pay for parking for the duration of the child's treatment. They do events and activities that get the families out and making new and more important memories, and it gets them away from the hospitals and the treatments and the diagnoses. And then they do wish trips to Orlando, Florida, which is on hold right now because of COVID. But um, going to Give the Kids the World in Orlando is an incredible experience for families with a child with cancer, because quite often siblings are overlooked when children are diagnosed with cancer. They quite often have siblings, and that child that's sick has, they're in treatment, and there's so much attention put on the child that's sick that sometimes siblings get a little left out of things. And the one thing I love about this charity is that it's family focused. They bring everyone together, and they just really inspire people. And I think that, in all the years that I've worked with them, they're definitely one of my favorites, and certainly one that has this incredible dedicated team of people on the board that have been affected by cancer. Some of them have lost children and grandchildren. The board chairs a childhood cancer survivor himself, and then other parents that they've had children that have survived childhood cancer. And I really just think they're awesome. And so that's my shout out for our community group.
They're a phenomenal organization, and the work that they're doing, it's just a great cause. In the link in the description of this video, there's going to be a link where you can find out how you can get directly involved with Help a Child Smile. Patti, you did mention, and I'm glad that you did, there are so many great causes here in our community. And it's one of the reasons on this show, I wanted to have an opportunity for every one of my guests to be able to shout somebody out. But I do want to give you a shout out and Rogers a shout out, because if you go to Rogers TV Brantford on your website, you have catalog of many of your past episodes, and you
Sure,
have
yeah.
had the who's who of Brantford everything. I think at some point, Brantford
Yeah.
Brant come onto your show and talk about their organizations, their businesses, their causes. And if you ever wanted to know a way to connect with a cause that is important to you, you guys are kind of a Rolodex of that,
We
where
are.
they could watch a past episode, learn a lot about what they do, and get involved and become a volunteer. So, thank you for the shout out to Help a Child Smile, but thank you also for making that such an important part of what you guys do.
Oh, yeah.
I want to say I maybe borrowed heavily from you.
That's
So we're
okay. That's our job. We want our community TV is community TV for a reason. It's there
yeah.
to support the community and offer everything that we can. And that's honestly, if there's anything that I can say about what I've done all these years is being able to meet these amazing people that do so much for the community. And it really does it's really fulfilling work. It fills your cup. And that's the kind of work that I love to have, and I'm really lucky that I have such a wonderful community here to be able to produce for.
I feel the same way. One of my favorite things about the career that I've built for myself is the phenomenal individuals that I have the opportunity to be able to interact with on a day-to-day basis. And so many of them, are so selfless. It's all about everyone else and not about them. And the whole reason I wanted to start Off the Wall was to be able to show off how incredible people in this community are. And, it's one of the reasons that you're here. You've had such an incredible impact on my life. But I can't imagine, in your years working at Rogers, the impact that you've had on other people just like me. So thank you so much for coming on the show and for sharing your story and for answering all of my questions. We're at the end. So if somebody wanted to stay in touch with Patti, or if they wanted to get in touch with Rogers, if they wanted to find you guys online, where do they go? What do they do? How do they get there? Tell me everything.
So on cable, we're on channel 20, and otherwise rogerstv.com. You can also follow us on Facebook, Rogers TV Channel 20. And yeah, just go to our website. All of our contact information is there. And like I said, I'm on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, so I don't get upset if people send me a message, hey, how can you help us with this? Because yeah,
And they can watch you on TV on Channel 20.
sometimes. I've been forced
Amazing.
out on air more than I would normally have been because of COVID, but yeah.
Amazing. Patti, seriously, thank you so much for coming on the
Thank
show.
you.
You're amazing. I appreciate every ounce of your time. I can't wait to see what you're up to next. So we have so many more guests lined up for future episodes. You've been watching Off the Wall. I'm your host, Joshua Wall, and we'll see you next week.